What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, there's a battle happening inside your chest? Not for your lungs or your blood, but for something far more precious. Your spiritual heart. And here's the terrifying truth that Islamic scholars have been warning about for over 1400 years. There are 4 silent assassins slowly murdering the very core of your faith, and you probably don't even realize it's happening. These aren't dramatic, obvious sins. These are everyday habits, things you might do without thinking twice. But according to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they're literally hardening your heart like stone, cutting you off from the divine light that should be flowing through your soul. Today we're exposing these 4 spiritual killers that are stealing your connection to Allah, and more importantly, how to fight back before it's too late. The first habit that's slowly killing your spiritual heart might shock you because it seems so innocent, so normal, so completely unavoidable in our modern world. It's excessive talking about meaningless things. You heard that right. The very thing we do most naturally, most frequently, most thoughtlessly, is actually one of the deadliest weapons against our spiritual well-being. Think about your average day. How much of your conversation is actually meaningful? How much time do you spend gossiping about celebrities, complaining about the weather, discussing what someone wore, or diving deep into the latest drama at work or school? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said something that should make every Muslim pause and reflect. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him speak good or remain silent. But here's what most people don't understand about this teaching. It's not just about being polite or avoiding hurt feelings. There's something much deeper, much more spiritually dangerous happening when we fill our days with empty chatter. Every word you speak is either watering the garden of your heart or poisoning it. There's no neutral ground. Ibn al-Qayyim, one of the greatest Islamic scholars in history, explained this phenomenon in a way that will completely change how you think about conversation. He said that excessive, meaningless talk creates a rust on the heart. Imagine your spiritual heart as a mirror that's supposed to reflect the light of Allah's guidance. Every pointless conversation, every moment spent discussing trivial matters, every complaint about things you can't control is like breathing fog onto that mirror. Slowly, gradually, the reflection becomes dimmer and dimmer until you can barely see the divine light anymore. This is why you might notice that people who talk constantly about shallow things often seem spiritually empty, even if they pray 5 times a day. They've unknowingly suffocated their own hearts with a constant stream of spiritual junk food. Their tongues are moving, but their souls are starving. The second habit is even more insidious because it disguises itself as productivity, as success, as taking care of your responsibilities. It's excessive eating, and it's not just about physical health. In Islam, there's a profound understanding that what you put into your body directly affects the state of your soul. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave us a formula that most Muslims have heard but few truly understand. The son of Adam fills no vessel worse than his stomach. It is sufficient for him to eat a few mouthfuls to keep him alive. If he must fill it, then let it be 1/3 food, 1/3 drink, and 1/3 air. This isn't just dietary advice. This is spiritual technology. Here's what happens when you consistently overeat. Your body becomes heavy, sluggish, requiring enormous amounts of energy just to process all that excess food. But more importantly, overeating creates a fog in your mind and a weight on your spirit that makes it incredibly difficult to focus during prayer, to feel the sweetness of remembering Allah, or to experience that spiritual lightness that comes from being truly connected to your Creator. Think about the last time you had a huge meal. How did you feel afterward? Probably sleepy, unfocused, maybe a little regretful. Now imagine living in that state constantly. That's what excessive eating does to your spiritual heart. It buries it under layers of physical lethargy and mental cloudiness. But there's an even deeper layer to this. In Islamic tradition, there's a concept called barakah, divine blessing in your sustenance. When you eat mindfully, gratefully, in moderation, your food becomes a source of spiritual energy. But when you eat excessively, mindlessly, constantly seeking more pleasure from food, you're actually training your soul to be enslaved by physical desires. You're teaching your heart that satisfaction comes from consumption rather than connection with Allah. The third habit is the one that's probably destroying more spiritual hearts in the modern world than anything else. And it's so normalized that most people don't even consider it a problem. It's excessive sleep beyond what your body actually needs. Now, before you get defensive, this isn't about becoming a workaholic or burning yourself out. Islam actually emphasizes the importance of rest and balance. But there's a massive difference between healthy sleep and using sleep as an escape from spiritual responsibility. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had a sleep pattern that modern sleep scientists now recognize as optimal. He would sleep early, wake up for the night prayer, then rest again before the dawn prayer. This pattern kept him spiritually alert and physically healthy. But here's the key insight. He never used sleep to avoid his connection with Allah. Excessive sleep, especially when it's used to escape from prayer, from remembrance of Allah, or from dealing with life's challenges, creates a spiritual numbness. It's like putting your soul into hibernation. You might think you're resting, but you're actually avoiding the very experiences that are designed to strengthen your faith. Think about it this way. Every moment you're unconscious by choice, when you could be conscious and connected to your Creator, is a moment your spiritual heart is essentially offline. And just like a muscle that isn't used regularly, a heart that spends too much time in spiritual sleep becomes weak, unresponsive, unable to feel the subtle signs of Allah's presence in your life. The scholars describe this condition as ghafla, spiritual heedlessness. It's not about being a bad person or committing major sins. It's about being spiritually asleep while you're physically awake. You go through the motions of worship, but your heart isn't really there. You recite prayers, but the words don't penetrate your soul. You hear the call to prayer, but it doesn't stir anything inside you. If you're recognizing yourself in any of these descriptions, don't panic. The fact that you're watching this video, the fact that you're concerned about your spiritual health, is actually a sign that your heart isn't completely dead. There's still hope, but we need to talk about the fourth habit, the one that ties all the others together and accelerates their destructive power. The fourth and most dangerous habit is excessive engagement with people who don't remind you of Allah. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit or cutting off all non-Muslim friends. It means being extremely intentional about who you spend your time with and what kind of spiritual energy they bring into your life. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said something that should revolutionize how you think about friendship. A person is upon the religion of his close friend, so let each of you look at whom he befriends. This isn't just about avoiding bad influences. This is about recognizing that the people around you are either elevating your spiritual state or dragging it down. There's no neutral ground. Here's what happens when you consistently surround yourself with people who never talk about Allah, never remind you of the afterlife, never encourage you in your worship, never call you to something higher than worldly pursuits. Slowly, gradually, your own spiritual awareness begins to fade. You start to think like they think, prioritize what they prioritize, worry about what they worry about. It's not that these people are evil or that you should hate them, but if the majority of your social interactions are with people who are spiritually unconscious, you're essentially training your heart to be unconscious too. You're normalizing a life where Allah is never mentioned, where spiritual growth isn't a priority, where the pursuit of worldly success becomes the highest goal. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, understood this principle deeply. They chose their friends not just based on personality or shared interests, but based on who would help them remember Allah more, who would encourage them to be better Muslims, who would remind them of their ultimate purpose in life. Now here's the terrifying part about all four of these habits. They don't destroy your spiritual heart overnight. They work slowly, subtly, like spiritual termites eating away at the foundation of your faith. You might not even notice the damage until you realize that prayer feels empty, that reading the Qur'an doesn't move you anymore, that the mention of Allah doesn't stir anything in your chest. But here's the hope, the light at the end of the tunnel that makes this entire conversation worthwhile. The same Islamic tradition that warns us about these spiritual killers also gives us the antidotes, the cures, the way back to a living, breathing, spiritually alive heart. The cure for excessive, meaningless talk is what the scholars call dhikr, the remembrance of Allah. Instead of filling your conversations with empty chatter, start weaving the remembrance of Allah into your daily interactions. Thank Allah for good news instead of just saying, awesome. Ask Allah for guidance when discussing challenges instead of just complaining. Share insights from Islamic teachings instead of just gossiping about people. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that Allah has angels traveling the earth looking for gatherings where people remember Allah, and when they find such gatherings, they call to each other saying, "Come to what you seek." Your conversations can become a form of worship, a magnet for divine blessings instead of a slow poison for your soul. The cure for excessive eating is mindful, grateful consumption combined with regular fasting. Start implementing the prophetic guidance literally. Eat until you're satisfied, not until you're stuffed. Thank Allah before and after every meal. See your food as a trust from your Creator, not just fuel for your desires. But more importantly, use voluntary fasting as a spiritual training ground. Fast on Mondays and Thursdays like the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to do. Fast during the white days of each lunar month. Use hunger as a reminder of your dependence on Allah, as a way to break your soul's addiction to constant physical pleasure. The cure for excessive sleep is establishing a spiritual rhythm that includes night prayer, early morning dhikr, and using your awake hours intentionally for worship and service. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that Allah descends to the lowest heaven during the last third of the night, asking, "Is there anyone calling upon me that I may answer him? Is there anyone asking forgiveness that I may forgive him?" Those precious hours before dawn, when the world is quiet and your soul can actually hear the whispers of divine guidance, are worth more than any extra hour of sleep. Start slowly. Wake up just 15 minutes earlier to make a heartfelt supplication. Gradually train your body and soul to treasure those moments of pre-dawn connection with your Creator. The cure for spiritually toxic relationships is intentionally seeking out righteous companionship while maintaining kindness toward everyone. Join Islamic study circles, attend mosque programs regularly, build friendships with people who inspire you to be a better Muslim. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that the example of a righteous companion is like a person who carries musk. Either he will give you some, or you will smell its fragrance. Surround yourself with people whose very presence reminds you of Allah, whose conversations include wisdom from Islamic teachings, whose life priorities align with what Islam teaches about success and fulfillment. This doesn't mean cutting off family members or being rude to non-Muslim colleagues, but it means being very intentional about who has the most influence over your thoughts, feelings, and spiritual state. Here's the beautiful truth that every Muslim needs to understand. Your spiritual heart is not just some abstract concept. It's the center of your entire existence. The place where faith lives, the organ that will determine your eternal destiny. When your heart is alive, everything else falls into place. Prayer becomes sweet. The Qur'an speaks to your soul. You see Allah's signs everywhere. You feel gratitude naturally. Difficulties become opportunities for spiritual growth rather than reasons to despair. But when your heart is dead or dying, even the most beautiful verses of the Qur'an sound like just words. Prayer feels like empty movements, and life loses its deeper meaning. You might have wealth, health, success, and popularity, but there's an emptiness inside that nothing in this world can fill. The choice is yours. Every day, every conversation, every meal, every hour of sleep, every person you choose to spend time with is either bringing your heart to life or killing it slowly. The beautiful thing about Islamic teachings is that they're not just theoretical. They're practical, tested spiritual technology that has been transforming hearts for over 1,400 years. Start today. Choose one of these 4 habits to work on. If excessive talking is your weakness, spend one day focusing on meaningful conversation and dhikr. If overeating is your challenge, try eating exactly according to the prophetic guidance for just one meal. If oversleeping is your issue, wake up just 10 minutes earlier tomorrow for a heartfelt prayer. If your social circle lacks spiritual nourishment, reach out to one person who reminds you of Allah. Your spiritual heart is waiting to come alive. It's designed to be a fountain of peace, gratitude, wisdom, and divine connection. Don't let these 4 silent assassins rob you of the most beautiful experience a human being can have, feeling truly, deeply connected to your Creator. The cure is in your hands, the guidance is clear, and the reward is a life of meaning, purpose, and spiritual fulfillment that nothing in this world can shake. Take action today because tomorrow might be too late. And your heart deserves to be spiritually alive.